Welcome once again to the Cow Report for this, what is this, Fred, October?
Yes, the second.
October 2nd,
Monday.
1995. Beautiful Monday afternoon right here in beautiful downtown Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And of course with me is my rusty, trusty sidekick, Fred
Stafford.
the Truth Stafford, and you got the brochure there to prove it.
Yeah.
All right, Freddie. On this date in history, we always like to find out what happened there. I brought you some water there so that wouldn't happen, Fred, but that's that. I think that's that trick glass that leaks. I notice it's getting water all over the table there. Some of them are trick ones, Fred. They come out this time of year. All right, October 2nd, Freddie, 1871.
Yes.
Mormon leader Brigham Young is arrested for polygamy. What church did Mormon leader Brigham Young belong to?
Well, if you don't know the answer to that, I don't think I'm going to give it to you.
All right, Freddie. Boy, you're sharp today, Freddie. Sharp as a dull razor. Okay, Freddie. Did you know there's a mysterious tropical disease sweeping through coastal regions of Venezuela? It's leaving 3,000 people ill and has killed 2. The disease is in the sweltering western state of Zulia on Venezuela's Caribbean coast, has also killed large numbers of animals, mainly horses and donkeys. Officials said the disease, which causes fever, convulsions, and vomiting, may be dengue fever, Fred. Now, that's almost on the southern borders of the United States. And it's transmitted by those mosquitoes again, Fred.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called encephalitis equina. Now, there's another mosquito-borne disease, Fred.
Yes.
Of course, the tsetse fly carries a disease, and the wood ticks carry disease. So, and in populated areas, Fred, they could conceivably pass the HIV virus from one person to the next on their feeding habits.
Yes.
Okay, Freddie boy, we got a lot to talk about today. Boy, oh boy. And of course, we have a film today of Maury Taylor
Mm-hmm.
from the Ames, Iowa get-together of the former 10 presidential candidates, which dropped to 9 when Pete Wilson dropped out, but now it's back to 10 again with Forbes getting in the race.
And
So it's still an even 10.
how about this Colin Powell?
He hasn't declared as a Republican. He thinks the Republican Party's too harsh. So that tells me he's quite a liberal.
Yes.
All right, Freddie boy. You know those doggone Russians are on the move again. Been
Yes.
keeping track of them, haven't you?
Yes.
Hey, Fred, I got another fundraising letter from Arlen Specter. Once again, he's got nothing bad to say about the Christian.
Is that right?
And this is called a telepost, high priority communication from the Arlen Specter 96 campaign. And it says, I have disturbing news. While you and your family were taking a vacation in July and August, Pat Buchanan, Pat Robertson, and their allies in the Christian coalition did not. While you and your friends and neighbors were getting a little rest and relaxation, the forces of the extremist right were hard at work. In the last few weeks, the committee in the U.S. House of Representatives quickly passed legislation to cut off Medicare funding of abortion for rape and incest victims, cut off federal funds for family planning and abortion counseling, and cut off access to abortion insurance coverage for federal employees. They didn't cut off anything, Fred. They voted to, and it's got to be signed into law, and President Clinton is probably going to veto it. He's already got his veto pen sharpened up, and he's got a couple gallons of ink.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the House Judiciary Committee actually passed legislation calling for jail terms for doctors who perform late-term abortions, even though such legal abortions are rare and are almost always performed to save the life of the mother. This is nothing less than the systematic dismantling of a woman's right to choice. While most Americans were at the beach or in the mountains, the radical right wing actually passed these proposals in the Congress. Charles. Well, you know, Fred, if they're so radical and right wing, how come they're controlling the House of Representatives? As I said, this is just the beginning of the Christian Coalition's plan to ban legal abortion, mandate school prayer, and knock down the walls of separation between church and state. Well, first he said it was the U.S. House of Representatives. Now he's blaming it on the Christian Coalition.
Yes.
Or Pat Buchanan. Of course, he's running against Pat, so this is a slam at Pat in his political campaign too. Now, you and I must be prepared to stop them in the U.S. Senate. I am prepared to put together a coalition of Democrats and pro-choice Republicans who will vote to preserve our woman's right to choose. We will need 51 votes to defeat them. I am prepared to take on Buchanan, Robertson, and their cohorts, but I need your help to do it. This is why I must ask if you can rush a check for $30 or $20 right away. Come on, Fred, get out your checkbook.
I'm not going to send him a check for anything. Matter of fact, I'll send one to Pat Buchanan before I would to him.
My colleagues on the Hill will be more willing to help me fight back if I can prove I'm gaining ground as a contender in the Republican race for president. Quite frankly, thanks to good friends like you, my pro-choice position is winning me growing support in Iowa and New Hampshire.
He only got 67 votes in Iowa.
And he got booed soundly for 15 minutes by about 12,000 Republicans. So I don't know where his support is. Maybe he's in the wrong party, Fred. Or maybe he stayed at the party too late. I do not think the American people elected the Republicans to enact a radical right social agenda. That includes banning legal abortion. Well, we'll find that out at the next voting. Republicans were elected in last November's landslide sweep to cut spending, lower taxes, create jobs, and get our fiscal house in order.
And he was one of the ones who voted for NAFTA and GATT, didn't he? And to send money to Mexico that the bankers was owed.
I mean, you read this letter,
that
Fred.
Doesn't make any jobs at all.
The 11th Commandment was never to attack a fellow Republican, but boy, here he says Buchanan, Robertson, Ralph Reed Jr., and now Speaker Newt Gingrich are headed in a different and more dangerous direction, a direction that destroys individual rights instead of preserving them.
That's not true.
With your help, I intend to make a fight of it.
That's a bold-faced lie.
Let's see here. I will run pro-choice TV commercials in all the early primary states, and I will fight them on the floor of the U.S. Senate. And, of course, please send me $30. You have been so generous in the past that I hesitate to ask you again, but I must. You know, Fred, my generosity was a $10 donation about 3 years ago during the Anita Hill hearings, when Specter stood up and saw what was happening there and voted the right way. So please help me sabotage. Now here he admits he's going to sabotage, Fred. It says, please help me sabotage their plans by sending my campaign the largest gift you can today to show them we are gaining strength by their intolerable actions, not losing it. I will be anxiously awaiting your reply. Okay, Freddie boy, where's the paper can? That takes care of that one. All right, Freddie. Now, on this date in history, Fred, in 1967, October 2nd, Thurgood Marshall becomes the first African-American Supreme Court Justice. October 2nd, 1967, Thurgood Marshall was the first African-American to become what court justice?
Supreme Court justice.
That's right. Glad we're back on track here now. Okay, Freddie, what do you got there?
I see that Dr. James Dobson in Focus on the Family has got an excellent article here which people should read, and it's Give Your Marriage a Fighting Chance, 8 Ways to Use Conflict to Strengthen Your Union. I would recommend that every American read it.
All right, now what's that poster on the wall behind you there, Fred?
Oh, that's up there now, huh? It says pornography pollutes body, mind, and soul, and the young lady is wearing the RAP campaign ribbon for decency.
Okay, and what is October?
October is Decency Month as proclaimed by the governor of our state, Tommy Thompson,
All right. Now, is that state or national?
state. And you know, the significance of that is the NEA, the National Endowment, or rather National Education Association, has proclaimed this to be Gay and Lesbian Month.
History Month, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The NEA is a 2.2 million member union. It's one of the strongest unions in the country, Fred. And of course, the Wisconsin version is WEAC and their cohorts. And of course, October they've named National Gay and Lesbian History Month, and their goal is to spread that line in the schools from kindergarten through 12th grade, all during the month of October through films, sexual plays, presentations on the homosexual lifestyle, death style, and it's not good, Fred, because during that time period, K through 12 is the most formative years for the children. And so what we have is pedophiles with teaching degrees pushing their wares all through the month of October to the public school kids.
Yeah.
And when you and I were talking about it, it's probably even going to get into the Catholic schools because there's NEA, WEAC members in there.
Now, pro-life teachers and members of conservative groups like Educators for Life, NEA, Pro-Life Caucus offered an amendment to the union's constitution which prohibits the NEA from funding abortion lobby groups. Can you believe a teachers union has anything to do with to eliminate unborn children? This is from the Family Research Council, which Gary Bayer is president. Now, unfortunately, the amendment failed by 4,553 to 2,162. They sound like progress until you figure out how as many as 2,300 delegates abstained from voting.
Okay, Freddie. Now, Beverly LaHaye is up in arms, and what she's requesting is that everybody that hears about this get a hold of their school boards, their principals at those schools, and their congressmen and senators, and let them know that they don't appreciate the propagandization that's going on in the public school system as far as sexual practices. School is that, you know, we're teaching them how to put condoms on bananas and all that stuff, Fred, but what about reading, writing, and arithmetic?
Mm-hmm.
You go to a McDonald's and they can't even make change for $1.
Well, you got to use a computer.
But they know how to put on a condom in the dark.
Yeah.
Okay, Fred. With over 2.2 million teacher members nationwide, the NEA's power in your community cannot be underestimated. And this current resolution comes on the heels of one they passed last year in which they called for, and the resolution they're talking about, Fred, is the 1995 National Convention of the NEA proclaimed October Gay and Lesbian History Month. But last year, Fred, their proclamation was sexual orientation training programs for all teachers, raising awareness of sexual stereotyping among students, promoting acceptance of homosexuality, lesbianism, and bisexuality. Well, of course, all three of those are the same thing, Fred. Homosexuality, lesbianism, and bisexuality is all homosexuality. And number 4, correcting student values and beliefs against homosexuality. So if a student stands up and says, on the grounds of my religious beliefs, I don't believe in this, they could get corrected by the teacher in front of the class and say, your values are not acceptable anymore. We're in the New World Order now, and homosexuality is an accepted practice. And you're going to learn to like it one way or the other if we have to take you down to the bathroom and let one of the pedophile teachers get a hold of you in the bathroom. Well, that's the way we're coming to, Fred. Because they want free reign in here to brainwash the millions of kids in the public school system. So what you need to do, Fred, is you need to call the school board superintendent in this area and ask them if they're going to allow this trash in the public schools during the month of October. It's no coincidence, Fred, that October is also National Coming Out Month for all the homosexuals in the country. I think October 11th. We had Tammy Baldwin from Madison travel the state a couple years ago on that date and helping out her homosexual buddies. And now, also it's no coincidence that Halloween falls in October, and it's also, what is it, the changing of the from summer to autumn, or from autumn to,
Yeah.
there's some kind of change in the planets there. That's a big thing with all the witches in October. It's one of the biggest months of the year for the witches. So Fred, the children of America are under assault by the NEA. And you know, the NEA also gets, their annual budget is something like $800 million, Fred. And some of that is taxpayers' money.
Yes.
So here they are, kindergarten. They're going to even be in the kindergartens telling those pliable little silly putty minds all about sexual practices of the sodomites. Can you believe it, Fred?
Yes. And I see in the New American magazine, which is published in Appleton, Wisconsin, the September issue of Liberty, educator John Gatto, who was New York City's Teacher of the Year in '90, argues that the contemporary government schooling is based upon many questionable assumptions, some of which serve to exalt the political state, diminish essential humanistic institutions like the family, and or define human nature as mean, violent, and brutish. He discussed several specimens of such false assumptions, which included social cohesion is not possible through means other than government schooling.
Okay, Fred. And getting back to that, what is a gender agenda, Fred? Pedro Moreno, the Rutherford Institute's international coordinator, participated in this conference and has written an article entitled Gender, Sex, and Feminism. I think the conference we're talking about, Fred, was the Fourth World Conference on Women that was held in China.
Yes.
Well, this guy attended it, and he says, I feel this article is so important that I have enclosed a free copy, blah, blah, blah. Okay, anyway, here's some of the high points from Pedro Moreno. We would have our children taught that there are multiple choices offered by the next conception of gender: female, male, transsexual, homosexual, bisexual. We can be whatever gender we choose or whatever gender society wanted us to become. Husbands and wives would no longer be the foundation of the family. Technology would replace traditional marriage. Pregnant high school girls would have a right to abortion services on school grounds. No need to tell their parents about it. Total freedom of choice would reign. Churches would be forced to provide gender-diverse perspectives on a gender-neutral God through female and male priests. The so-called gender agenda is nothing more than a rubber stamp pledge to gender justice that Bella Abzug's Women's Environment and Development Organization circulated to organizations such as Planned Parenthood Now, Greenpeace, Virtual Sisterhood, and the World Federalist Organization before the conference. So there you have it, Fred. This is not just something the NEA is doing in the school system, but they're working on a worldwide basis. And here was that figure, Fred. The NEA, here's what Beverly LaHaye from the Concerned Women of America says about them. The power, wealth, and influence of the NEA has recently been exposed, not only by pro-family organizations like CWA, but also by national publications. Forbes magazine, which Steve Forbes, is running for president, owns, has called the NEA's America's largest and richest brass-knuckled labor union. With over 2.2 million members in the U.S., the NEA rakes in more than $785 million in revenues annually, Fred. NEA members exert incredible power over the U.S. Congress and the White House.
That's true. And I know I was in the American Family Association in New York City years ago, and we're well aware of that power. And we attempted to combat it, but you know that the IRS denied to give them a income tax exemption.
Well, Freddie, I don't think it matters because they're getting tax dollars from federal, state governments now.
Well, this denied the American Education Association an income tax exemption.
Oh, them. All right.
And they even went to court, and the justices supported that denial.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Freddie, what do you got there?
Well, in 1990, Senator Edward Kennedy, Democrat, Massachusetts, he praised on Senator Bob Dole, Republican Kansas, for the key role Dole played in achieving the passage of Americans with Disability, ADA. Dole and 5 other current presidential candidates, Senator Phil Gramm, Richard Lugar, Pete Wilson, and Arlen Specter, and Bob Dornan voted for it. And Bob Dornan was in the House.
Yeah, you know, you look at some of these guys' voting records, like Dornan's about 58% conservative, Gunderson's 56, so, and they're attacking each other, and they both claim to be conservatives.
Well,
Neither one of them are 99%ers like our friend out there in Tobacco State. Guy that always looks like he's got a wad of tobacco in his mouth. Who's the old guy there? The senator.
Yeah, I can't think of his name now, but I know who you mean.
Yeah, that senator out there, the one that's always chewing tobacco and spitting it on the liberals. What's his name? That chewing tobacco guy. All right, Freddie. I think we're going to take a call here. And first of all, Fred, 1971, October 2nd, singer Tiffany Darwish is born. On October 2nd, 1971, singer Tiffany Darwish is born. What was her occupation?
Well, I think she was a singer,
All right.
a chanteuse.
A what?
A chanteuse.
What's a chanteuse?
That's one who sings.
Huh. It's amazing. Okay, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
All right.
I was just wondering what you guys think about the OJ case. What do you think the outcome of the trial will be, and what's your personal opinion?
Well, let me see. See this glove here? We sent that all the way out to the trial, and they mailed it back. They didn't want it. They said, we got enough evidence to convict him. So I said I would wear this until we find out whether he wins or loses. Now, if he loses, there are probably going to be riots. If he wins, they'll probably pass out champagne all over Los Angeles. If he loses, they'll pass out gasoline. So which is going to be, Fred, gas or champagne?
I think he's going to be they're not going to be able to decide, and there will be maybe a little celebration out in Los Angeles.
And what?
And I personally think, from what I've listened to, that the guy is guilty.
Yeah, aside from trying to turn Furman into the convicted felon and the bad guy. I mean, if you listen to that Johnny Cochran, it was Furman that killed him, and he blamed O.J. because poor O.J. is not the right color, so he's a rich black and the whites are against him. So 150 L.A. police and attorneys in the morgue and the medical examiner and the eyewitnesses and the dog and all the evidence in the hair and everything that was found at the scene. It was all one big conspiracy to get a black man.
I don't believe that.
Huh.
What's with the wig, too?
I don't know. You'll have to ask Fred about that. Fred's wearing a wig?
No.
That's his problem. Okay, Fred. We better get back to this. Now, you know, Fred, this is pretty much every October they come out with a new film with that guy with the hockey mask on. Halloween, I think it is.
Yeah.
Well, here's where this guy originated. Back in 1980, Pennsylvania legislator Michael Myers of Pennsylvania is expelled from the House of Representatives after being convicted of bribery. So he later on went on to make 6 films, Halloween series, and the 6th one. But he was a former Pennsylvania legislator in 1980. All right, Freddie, did you know that the Panama Canal we might not lose it yet?
Is that
December
right?
31st, 1999
Mm-hmm.
is the date that we're going to hand it over. Of course, Fred, there are certain areas in the world that you don't give up to the communists and the dictators, and they're called choke points and canals. Now, choke points are like they'll have a nice big bay, a deep water bay that you can bring ships into and offload goods. Are you with us?
Yes.
And but the choke points will have a kind of a small opening, about like that, and then the bay will be in here. Those are called choke points. There's several of them around the world that are very strategic. Like the Gulf of Mexico is a choke point.
Mm-hmm.
The Gulf of Hormuz over there by Iran and Kuwait was another one. Also the Suez Canal's one and the Panama Canal are others. You don't give them away to dictators or possibly to communists or socialists, because eventually if there's a world war or a regional conflict, those will come in handy.
Yes.
You're still here, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, so back in the 70s, your buddy Clinton, or Clinton Carter, or Carter Clinton, whatever his name was, one of them hillbillies from down south who became president, I guess it was Carter, he gave away the Panama Canal. They really twisted arms to give that thing away, if you'll recall.
Yes.
And so there's been a small group of people who have been fighting ever since to get it back in the United States here. And we might see a vote on that, Fred, to rescind this 1999
That
giveaway.
would be a good idea, and I would favor that.
But President Clinton and Panama President Ernesto Perez Ballesteros talked about prospects during the Panamanian's leader of the official working visit to the White House about to discuss whether an American military presence should be maintained in the Caribbean nation after it gains control of the Panama Canal in 2000. Perez Ballesteros, talking to reporters after the meeting, said he and Clinton spoke about the possibilities to explore, informally at first, whether it would be interesting for both countries to maintain some degree of U.S. presence after the year 2000. Now, Fred, the United States... What? The United States bought Panama from Colombia.
Yes.
There was no Panama
And
there.
Panama became a country after that.
The Panama Canal
We were responsible for establishing it.
Panama Canal was set aside. It was called the Canal Zone. Anything inside that borders was owned by the United States. They gave the rest of Panama and let them create a country called Panama.
Right.
Before that, all that was part of Colombia.
Yes.
So here, 100 years later, the hillbilly socialist from Georgia, Carter, who became president, and fooled a lot of Christians along the way, he comes in there, and one of his first acts is to give away the Panama Canal Zone. And at that time, there was a dictator in there that was palling up to the Colombian drug lords and also to Fidel Castro.
Well, you may recall there's a little more to that. Henry Kissinger was one of the ones who was strongly in favor of it.
Well, it's one of those things you don't give away, Fred. It's one of those vital
Right.
passageways, along with the choke points in the world, that you
Yes.
just don't give to the communists.
Right.
Now, if you remember, over there in Africa, Fred,
Mhm.
Somalia comes to a point in eastern Africa.
Mhm.
And also South Yemen was the other point there. It was one of the choke points into the Suez Canal. The communists controlled both areas there for shipping coming in. At any time, they could have stopped any shipping right there in that part of the world. So Somalia is kind of in disarray right now, and Yemen toppled their communist government, and now they're a socialist government. But that's another choke point that's very serious. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hi, question number 1. What is your theme for today? The theme for today?
The theme.
Your theme that you're...
Fred, what is your theme song anyway? Go Pat Go, or
Yes.
All right.
I mean, do you have a program theme right now?
Oh, we take calls on just about any subject underneath the sun because there's nothing new under the sun.
But why are you dressed that way?
Which way?
With a wig and sunglasses and a tie and what is that, a baby toy? Okay, so my next question.
I go around like this all the time. What do you mean dressed that way? I didn't dress up for this show.
Which leads me
Fred's
to
the
my
one
next.
that dresses up.
Which leads me to my next question. Do you have any upcoming plans to run for 3rd District again?
3rd District.
Congress, in other words, Chuck.
Well, you know, that's about, what is that, Fred? About 13 months away?
Oh, you are going to run, aren't you?
That's about 13 months away, and
Huh?
we're talking to the doctors to see if they'll let me run again or not.
Take the stress?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay, well, thanks a lot.
Well, thanks for calling in, and we appreciate your call.
Yep, bye.
Bye. Okay, Freddie. The doctors haven't made up my mind yet. All right, Fred. Okay, I had something here very important, Fred, that I had to tell you about.
Yes.
SB 269, the Immigration Control and Financial Responsibility Act. That's the Senate version, and the House version is H.R. 1915, Immigration and National Interest Act. You need to call your Congress to oppose both bills. They will create a national computer registry of all citizens in the United States, all 270 million, Fred.
Mm-hmm.
The only ones that they won't have a computer registry of are the
Illegal aliens?
the illegal aliens that are hiding in the basements and everywhere else when the census takers comes around, and they say there could be upwards of 7 or 8 million of them running around the country.
Yes.
Okay, it requires employers to receive permission from the registry before hiring a new employee. So you'll take that smart card, Fred, with the magnetic strip on it. You'll have to give that to the employer, and he'll have to run it through something like a credit card
Yes.
scanner, and it'll scan to see if you're a legal citizen or not.
Mm-hmm.
It requires all births and deaths be registered with the Office of Employment and Benefits. Create a national ID card requiring biometric technology using both physical and behavioral characteristics. According to Secret Service testimony, this could include facial features, hand geometry, retinal and iris patterns, DNA, fingerprints, and signature analysis. Now, Fred, that iris patterns is not, this isn't space age, I mean, this isn't out there in the distant cosmos. They're already putting out national contracts, the federal government is, to do this research. It's already out there. I've seen the contract bids for it. This stuff is real, Fred. This isn't pie in the sky or somebody's dream here.
Yes.
California Senator Dianne Feinstein said it is her intention to see Congress immediately implement a national identity system where every American is required to carry a card with a magnetic strip on which the bearer's unique voice, retina pattern, or fingerprint is digitally encoded. Voting on these bills is tentatively scheduled for September, Fred. I don't know if it's too late or not. The Capitol Switchboard is 1-202-224-3121. I don't recall whether they voted on that yet, Fred. I think they might not have.
Either.
So the Capitol Switchboard is 202-224-3121. And you need to voice your opposition to this, Fred, because once again, it's like we got gang trouble in Minneapolis, Fred, so we're going to take away the farmers' shotguns over here in Cadott. So here, we're going to force 270 million Americans to line up like cattle and take all these marks and all these cards and stuff because of about 10 million illegal aliens. Why not just round up the illegal aliens? Force them to take some kind of mark instead of the 270 million Americans.
Right.
And force them back out of the country to from where they came from. I mean, we're the biggest dupes in the world, Fred.
Yes.
So, area code 202-224-3121. And call and voice your opposition or your support if you want to give your fingerprints, your retinal pattern, your voice pattern, facial features, iris features, and all those other features to somebody that's going to put them on a little magnetic card and force you to wear it.
Yes.
or even maybe take a biochip and force you to have it inside of your body at all times. What do you got, Freddie?
Well, I see, and this is from the New American Magazine and the October 2nd issue, that the Wall Street Journal for July 21st headline that the Legal Service Corporation may survive the age of Gingrich, going on to report that for years the federal office that dispenses grants to lawyers to represent poor people have been under siege by conservative Republicans who want to annihilate it. And actually, the truth about the matter is the LSC is not so much involved with representing the needy as giving power to radical lawyers who hide behind the poor while advancing their own causes. Tax money through the LSC, notes Howard Phillips and Peter Ferrara, funds a crusade by left-wing lawyers to hold up middle-class taxpayers for unbounded income redistribution and welfare schemes.
Huh. That's really something. Roy, need to get a close-up here on this. Okay, this here is a Wisconsin state map. You can get them from, you can get them all over the state, but also your state representatives and your state senators hand these out like candy. Now, what these are, Fred, and this is part of the problem in this country, this here is paid for by the taxpayers. But on this side of it, what you have here is a piece of propaganda for State Representative Dave Plombaugh. Now, Dave is not the only one that's guilty. All 99 representatives and all 33 senators are involved in this scam. What it does is, once again, makes the playing field uneven. It gives the advantage to the incumbent. And hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayers' money is paying for this propagandistic nonsense, Fred.
Yes.
It says right on here, in the fine print, right down here, it's your 1995-96 official state highway map. Now it says, published at state expense by the Wisconsin Department of Transportation for free distribution. So, what I suggest is, Fred, either they allow every candidate in the state of Wisconsin to get as many of these as they want to hand out, like Dave Zine, Dave Plombaum, Senator Rod Moen, Rob Krybeck, they all do it, or they quit doing this practice and quit wasting the taxpayers' money so that the candidates can give out free pieces of literature. This is not fair, Fred, to anybody running against these candidates, these incumbents.
Yes.
There's nothing fair about it. This is a state map. It's for everybody in the state. And it's not just for these politicians to hand out and make it so they give it to their constituents and their constituents feel like they really got some.
Yes.
Because if you go buy this map, what is it, $2-3 in the gas station now, Fred?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, by these guys handing this out, they're giving something of value, and it's almost like buying a vote.
Well, years ago, we used to get those things for free at the gas station, and they were given out by the oil company.
Now, Fred, this is just one of dozens and dozens of freebies and special privileges that these state senators and state assemblymen have
Yes.
as incumbents that an outsider running against them doesn't have. They've got the full weight and force of their office. They've got all kinds of propaganda sources, Fred, to push their so-called agendas out there.
Yes.
And this is just another piece of their literature and their propaganda against or for them and against their opponent. Because if I was going to run against this guy, Fred, and I could get a hold of 100,000 of these maps, I would have to pay $1 a piece for it. This guy can distribute 100,000 of them for free. And when you give this to somebody, Fred, you're saying, here's a gift from me. I'm your state representative, and here's a gift, Fred. Now you remember this at election
Right.
time. It's unfair.
Right.
All right, we better take a call here, Fred. They're backed up all the way to Cleveland. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, I was just wondering what you thought about Dave Zine's support of the new Brewers Stadium.
Well, perhaps Dave needs to go down to Milwaukee and run for office. You know,
You think he's making a mistake then?
I think that we're getting on very thin ice here when we start supporting professional teams. Because what's Herb Cole going to do? Is he going to come along and say, I need $100 million for a new stadium?
Well, he might.
And then how about the Green Bay Packers? They would like to have an enclosed stadium. Now, this is all about politics and skyboxes and the big shots that want to have a nice little restaurant and a retractable stadium. The Milwaukee Brewers are losing money now. And what's to say that a new stadium is going to make any difference? And why is the state of Wisconsin getting involved in these private enterprises? Would the owner, Bud Selig, would he give his profits back to the state if he starts becoming profitable? I say if he wants to borrow money from the state, he'd probably be a pretty good risk. Because if we give him a 20-year loan, that would tied into it that he would have to stay in the state for 20 years. Then we got him on the hook. We can give him all this money, build a stadium. He could sell the team and skip town and go to Tahiti for the rest of his life.
Yeah, but he could do that anyway if we loaned him the money. All he's got to do is declare bankruptcy, and then he'd get out of it.
That's what I'm saying. There should be strings attached some way.
Right. Well,
At least if he declares bankruptcy, we'd have the stadium. But I mean, he could sell the stadium and everything to another private individual or another gun.
Well, so have you talked to Dave Zine about this, or what does he think?
Well,
Is he under a lot
Dave
of...
is a politician, and he's skirting the issue just like they all do. And he's saying that the paper says he stopped short of endorsing but he said he would hate to be the senator that his vote voted to send the Brewers out of the state of Wisconsin. I would say that is bribery on the part of the Brewers.
Well, my understanding was he was going to vote for this package in the Senate.
Well, that's unfortunate for Dave. Perhaps he's in the wrong district because there's a lot of farmers up here that are on the verge of bankruptcy, and they're kind of held over from the depression we had in the state of Wisconsin. A lot of family farmers are going under. I mean, there's still pockets of depression in this state. Clark County, the whole county is still in depression. I mean, like with Eau Claire is one of the areas. But see, what better time for this guy to come along and say, hey, give me your tax money. We're kind of in a boom right now, but that boom could come to a bust, and Wisconsin is known for that. It's just like the weather. I mean, one year it's great, and the next year it's lousy. Or one season's great and then lousy. But in Wisconsin, you never know. When we have depressions, they last longer than the upswings do, and we're in an upswing now, but they're usually short-lived in this state. Very fragile economy. And I don't think, the state of Wisconsin just lost $120 million on a boondoggle down there in Mexico. And that was taxpayers' money that went down there, and retirement money. The city of Eau Claire had like $50 million in there, and Don Norell had enough foresight to jerk it out because he saw that it was unstable. So there we were over a $100 million loss that had to be made up, and now we're going to throw another couple $100 million. How big an amount is that loan anyway, or that giveaway down there?
I don't know.
$250 million, isn't it?
I tell you, Fred, there's a lot of things that could be used for that money. I say that guy went into the business. If we have to take all the people that lose their jobs over this thing, the $200 million would be better spent retraining all those hot dog vendors and the T-shirt salesmen into good technical computer-type jobs anyway. And they could bulldoze that stadium down and put up a garden down there. Or they can let free enterprise have its way and let Bud Selig either get out of the state or sell it to somebody else in the state. I'm sure Herb Cole would buy it up in a minute.
All right, well, thank you.
All right, thanks for calling in. Okay, Freddie. Got a little pro-life prayer here for you. Did you get one of those?
Yes.
A quote from Mother Teresa. How can there be too many children? That is like saying there are too many flowers. Wasn't that nice, Fred?
Mm-hmm.
It's like saying there's too many flowers. Okay, Freddie.
I see where
What do you got there?
Chile privatized the Social Security program in '81 into a program similar to IRAs, individual retirement accounts, in this country. According to a report in the Wall Street Journal, the program pleased officials, workers, even organized labor by accumulating $25 billion, which represents 45% of Chile's gross domestic product. Argentina, Colombia, and Peru have been inspired by Chile's example and are moving in the same direction.
Okay.
Says James Small out of the Hudson Institute.
All right. Well, I'm glad to see that Chile, Wisconsin has their own retirement plan.
No, that's
Okay,
Chile,
Madeline Murray O'Hare is
Chile,
dead.
South Africa.
Chile, South Africa.
No, Chile, South America, brother.
Okay, is Madeline O'Hare dead, Fred? That's what the question says from the Star Tribune, Friday, September 29th. Madeline Murray O'Hare, Fred, hasn't been seen for weeks. She's 76 years old, and they're fearing that she died. And they're trying to, according to this article, it says that they're going to hide her body until cremated or buried so that the Christians couldn't claim that she had a deathbed conversion to Christianity. Is Madeline Murray O'Hare dead? Of course, you know she's the one that got prayer out of the schools back in '62.
Yes.
And not too long ago, she went to a book fair in Russia. And from what I understand, the book stands where the Bibles and the Christian books were swamped. And O'Hare had so much little business that she was caught on camera snoring, sleeping. Nobody was even coming to her booth. They had 75 years of communism and atheism, and they know what it did to their country, so they didn't want to come and buy her trash. So there she sat at the book fair with no buyers.
Ironically, communism isn't dead. It's still alive, and they're building all kinds of armament.
That's for sure, Freddie.
Yes.
Okay, we better take a call, Fred. They're backed up all the way to Cincinnati. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, I was wondering what you did with them cows.
Did what?
With them cows?
Which one?
What do you do with them? All of them?
This one?
Yeah. What do you fuck them up?
Okay, Freddie. Freddie, you know there's a big march coming up here. October 16th in Washington.
Well, there's one coming up here on October the 8th, which is Sunday, and that's at Regis High School. And you got the pro-life rally.
Yeah, that's been kind of a
2
bust.
o'clock.
Been kind of a bust the last couple of years. I hope they have a better speaker this year, Fred. Okay, the Black Caucus endorses the Million Man March, Fred. Now, we broke the story here almost a year and a half ago about
Yes.
Louis Farrakhan, Nation of Islam, was going to have a Million Black Man March in Washington, D.C., but it was going to be an armed march. He wanted a million black men with guns to march on Washington. Well, now the liberals and all the Jesse Jackson types and all them have rushed in now, and they've kind of pushed Farrakhan to the side, and they're claiming it's their march now.
Ah.
So now they're going to have this march on October 16th, and even the Black Caucus in Washington of legislators has gotten behind it. So they're minimizing now Louis Farrakhan's call for this march, even though he's the one that created it and talked about it for a year and planned it. All these latecomers are jumping on board now and saying it's their march, and Farrakhan's got nothing to do with it. And Fred, have we mentioned before that the House Judiciary Committee endorses building a 14-mile triple fence along the Mexican border in California and doubling the Border Patrol to deter illegal immigrants? You know, Fred, if I was an illegal alien sitting down in Mexico, it wouldn't take much brain matter to just do an end run like in football and go to the end of the 14-mile fence and cross there. What's 14 miles amongst a few illegal aliens? And when they say they're doubling the Border Patrol, that means they're going to go from 2 Barney Fifes to 4. Okay, Freddie, I think we got a call here, and then we'll take your latest bit of paraphernalia there. Okay, go ahead, caller. You're on the air. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, this is Mark Rossingler. And what was that subject you were talking about, that lady that died?
Madeline Murray O'Hare, the famous atheist who threw school prayer out of the public schools
Oh, yeah.
under the separation of church and state doctrine.
You're a fucking peep.
Okay, Fred, you know, and isn't that ironic how the witches can get in there during Halloween and celebrate the vernal equinox and all that stuff, and Halloween, and they say that's not religion? Humbug. Okay, Freddie, what do you got there?
I see in Boston, for example, 44 and 6% of public school teachers put their children in private schools, compared to 28 and 9/10 of all parents, according to a study released by the Center for Educational Reform in Jersey City. And Jersey City is 50 and 3/10%. And in Cleveland, it's 52 and 8%.
Roy, are you with us?
And it's rather interesting that so many public school teachers are sending their children to private schools.
Because they know what they're teaching is not good for that child's mind, Fred.
Right? Well, there's no what shall I say, no discipline in the schools to begin with. And you don't have discipline. How can you teach kids?
Okay, Freddie, food stamp fraud. It's been rampant. There was some sweeps in Milwaukee not too long ago. The latest one, dozens arrested in sweep to battle food stamp fraud. Dozens of bartenders, grocers, suspected drug dealers, and others were rounded up Friday on charges of trading cocaine and money for food stamps, part of a nationwide crackdown on food stamp trafficking. Boy, took them a long time to wake up, Fred. This has been going on for years. Law enforcement agents were moving to arrest 60 people in the area around Ocilla in South Georgia on charges that they sold crack and powdered cocaine for food stamps. In Brownsville, Texas, an additional 20 people were being arrested on charges that they purchased food stamps for cash, 50 cents on the dollar. Among those being sought were a grocery store owner and an employee and a worker in local taverns, restaurants, and 2 auto repair shops. The crackdown, set in motion by the Agriculture Department's Inspector General, Roger Valladero, also led to the arrest Friday of a Chicago grocery store owner on trafficking charges involving $1.3 million in food stamps, Freddie. Grocery store owners in New York also have been arrested or sentenced since Operation Checkout began August 1st, including 2 brothers accused of trafficking $16 million worth of food stamps over the past 5 years, and a husband and wife team accused of trafficking $3.5 million. So this is big business, Fred.
Yes.
I'm sure the mafia's found out about this by now. They're probably in it big time too. Stores are often targeted in trafficking investigations because authorized retailers are the only gateways through which food stamps can be redeemed in full for cash from the federal government. In a typical scheme, a grocery store owner buys food stamps directly from a recipient at 50 to 70 cents on the dollar. Grocers may also purchase the food stamps from third parties such as wholesale grocers, drug dealers, or route drivers who trade food stamps for cash or contraband. So it's a big business, Freddie.
Well, in 1944, I rode on the railroad train with a man who was telling me, well, if you need any food stamps, and that was during the war, just let me know, and I'll get you some. He had all kinds of them.
Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yes, Mr. Call Reporter, this is Fritz. What I'm curious about is the Magnificent Seven that sold us out on that assembly bill had to do with the stadium. Do you know their names, and do you know what the blackmail our Governor Tommy Gunn used on them?
Let's see, the Magnificent Seven. Well, I know Rob Krybeck bit the bullet and voted against it. Very intelligent choice, Fred. You know, that Krybeck's turned into quite a legislator. He's also voted pro-life here a couple times.
So did our man from Clark County.
Zukowski?
Bob Zukowski.
Yeah, because you know why, Fred? Because he's in Clark County where there's a lot of poverty, a lot of poor farmers. And also, Krybeck has part of the Augusta area. There's some poverty down in that area. And they don't want more money being thrown at Milwaukee just so Tommy and the boys have a nice place to drink their beer and watch a baseball game.
Yeah, well, it really sounds nice to me. But
I don't know who the Magnificent Seven are, but it would seem to me like there was something like 53 of them or something that voted for it.
I think that they sold out their constituents.
Well, it was the big city against the rural areas, and the big city voters like Madison and the Milwaukee area and them had the enough votes. Now, this is coming up for a vote in the Senate here, so you should put pressure on Moan and Zine up here. Tell them you don't want them to be throwing more money at that dark hole in Milwaukee.
Moan is against it.
Well, good. Maybe the pressure needs to be bared on Zine. Dave always has catered to the Milwaukee crowd. I don't know if he gets some of his political action money from down there or what the problem is, but the paper sure does show that he's leaning towards voting for it.
Well, it sounds like Zine's listening to Milwaukee and he's not listening to his northern constituents.
What'd you call him, Tommy Gunn?
Tommy Gunn, yeah. Matter of fact, I heard that one fellow said at a budget meeting, shoot him.
Huh. Well, you don't want to be saying stuff like that. That's the Secret Service will show up at your door.
Yeah, well, he must have been kidding.
Yeah. Well, we want to thank you for calling in. I don't know who the Magnificent Seven were, but there's only 33 senators, and I think they've got one vacancy right now because of a death. So there's 32 of them. So they still need 17 votes to carry that down there. And I say let Bud Selig pay for his own, or let him borrow money through the banking, and or if he's going to borrow from the state, let's charge him interest, and he puts up
Sandbox, they want to play in it, let them support it.
and he puts up the whole franchise as collateral. So if he goes down, we'll call it the Wisconsin Brewers, and it'll stay in the state because we'll have it around our necks for many years because of the loans. That way the state would own it. This way here, like I say, someday somebody will say, hey, we'll give you $200 million for the whole shooting match, and he'll sell it and leave the state. Well, thanks for calling in, caller.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate it. Okay. Well, Freddie, Freddie, there's a dozen good reasons to get the U.S. out of the United Nations.
I agree with you there, and incidentally, in this magazine, UN boosters plenty worried. They think it may go the way of the League of Nations.
Now, isn't there an American soldier that refused to put on
Yes.
the United Nations military uniform?
Yes,
He didn't want to get under the One World Army?
that's Michael New.
N-E-W is his last name.
Yes, and he said, I told my superiors I'm an American soldier and will serve as a medic where I'm sent and will seek to help my fellow soldiers. I'm not going to wear that uniform. I believe that the UN is a foreign power, no different than a foreign government.
That's right. And Freddie,
That's from the New American Magazine. Incidentally, this issue is really a good one. I'd recommend you come down to the library if you don't have a copy and read it.
here's what Pat Buchanan says about Bosnia. I would keep U.S. ground troops out. Bosnia has never been an independent country. It contains Serbs, Croats, and Muslims whose quarrels are rooted in ethnic conflicts and hatreds dating back to before we were a nation. We have no vital interest in whose flag flies in which quadrant of Bosnia. So keep U.S. troops out and do not put 25,000 U.S. troops into a police action, with a temporary truce. Make that blunder and we will have planted our foot in a quagmire. The American people can see no vital interest. This is Europe's war. This is Europe's war, Fred. It's Europe's quarrel, and our rich European friends ought to take the lead in solving it themselves. Time the Europeans grew up and took responsibility for their own backyard. Well, unfortunately, we've wound down to another ending here. So we'll see you again next week, right here on the Cow Report. I've been your host, Shecky Formel, and my rusty, trusty sidekick, Fred the True Stafford.
Okay.
Adios, amigos.
Okay, Chuck Lee.
Boy, Fred, you were sharp today. Bye.